Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey everybody, it's Will Slickers here, and there's just one thing I want to say before continuing on to this episode. Renew System professionals are uniquely prepared during this unprecedented time to deep clean and disinfect your property according to the protocols set forth by the CDC. With 30 years of addressing the needs of the hospitality industry, they have experience in dealing with many situations including biological contaminants, and they go above and beyond the scope of work that normal janitorial staff would perform. Their professionals are trained to perform a proactive cleanup. Renew Systems aims to be your partner during these times. As a small business with national and international presence, they strive to exceed any and all of your expectations. When this is all over with, society will be more critical than ever when it comes to cleanliness and sanitation. So together, we can ensure to wow them with floor-to-ceiling, pristine cleanliness and safety. Go ahead and check out Renew Systems at www.renewsystems.com. That's www.renewsystems.com. Now back to the episode.
But I mean, that vulnerability, it starts there, right? Like, I don't know, I can't farm the apple trees or the blueberry plants or that greenhouse. But every time I'm here, I am so excited to learn more. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think, that's where it becomes really powerful. And that's where I think the storytelling really takes flight because it is always an evolution. It was with beer for us. It continues to be with beer, and it will always be. We're manufacturing a product every day that then somebody is consuming. That's part of an experience that we want them to come back and repeat as soon as they want to, or as soon as they possibly can, right? Or share that story. It's the same with this. It's just one more manufactured kind of opportunity to say, hey, we actually produced this, and this is how we did it. And you get there by being vulnerable, being aware of what you don't know, and being willing to understand it. And I love that.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
All right, welcome back to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. I'm a little giddy and excited. Not only am I on 3, 4, maybe 5 cups of coffee, but this has been an episode in the making for quite a long time. I think for all of you listeners out there to get a little bit of a backstory, I have been obsessed with hotels and hospitality, and part of that led me to my journey in Cannon Beach, where I started working with Martin North, and then of course met Ryan, who is our guest today on the show. Ryan is the CEO and owner of Martin North out in Cannon Beach, Oregon. And I'm just excited because this is a man who has just been a good example to look up to, who has been somebody I've admired throughout my journey and my growth in the career and just the overall industry. So I'm excited to have Ryan on the show and finally get some of that hospitality passion in the show. So welcome, Ryan.
Well, first off, thanks, Will. Thanks for having me. And this is a long time in the making. So it's been fun to watch your journey and see you as you expand your career in hospitality. And, you know, we're all in this thing together. We all know why we do it. And it's because we love people. And you know, that's exciting because we all kind of bond between those thoughts. So so you'll notice like my background today a little bit different, right? This is not a dropped in background. I'm actually out at our farm, Public Coast Farm today. I had kind of an impromptu meeting that I needed to be at, so calling a variable here, setting up a little farm chair, and gonna have this meeting out here in the field. So just super stoked to be here, and thanks for having me. So
Of course, yeah, and that's the beauty of podcasting. It can be done almost anywhere, including a nice farm out in Oregon. So Ryan, I want to get into the meat of the bones, of what you do, who you are, your background. So if you want to paint a picture for everybody that's listening, just where did you get started in the hospitality industry? What is your story, your overall origin of where you are, like what got you to where you are today?
Yeah. So I think there's two parallel paths that I think are both very important, and I'll start with mine, which is what you're asking. So I grew up in Southern California, and the tourism hospitality mecca of Palm Desert. So where I was growing up, you were either working at a country club or you were going to a country club, and
Mhm.
I was always working in a country club. So I was very, very blessed and fortunate. My closest friend growing up, um, his name was Kerry Cosgrove, and his dad was the general manager of a very prestigious club in the Coachella Valley. And early on, I got introduced to what like a high level of hospitality really looked like in action, because he was probably one of the premier club managers,
Mhm.
maybe even in the United States. Very sought after, very, very prestigious location. So it was very interesting because that wasn't the background. So my parents, my dad lived in Las Vegas, and he was an auto wrecker. And so early on, when I would go to visit my dad, I got kind of dialed in with computers and started working with inventory systems, and I would geek out on that stuff. But I was always a very creative guy, so I was very into art and music, and so it was kind of always this quandary between creative and analytical, right? So I
Yeah.
was in that space forever, never really sure where that was going to come out with hospitality, but that was the industry that I knew. So at many points, I was engaged in school in Las Vegas, and was enrolled at UNLV in their hospitality tourism program, and was working for a restaurant company in Las Vegas, and was working as a bartender, and had worked my way up. Had started there. I'd come out of college, and I wanted to work in a brewery, and I wanted to. This was Holy Cow Brewing, which was on the Strip in Las Vegas. And I remember the manager, general manager Mark. Remember we're interviewing, and I said, I want to bartend here for you at this brewery. And he said, why would I hire you as a bartender? And it was just this really funny moment. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you? Like, I want to do it, and I'm going to be your best bartender. And he's like, but I don't need a bartender. And we're on the Strip, and like, he basically had his pick of the litter. Right.
Yeah.
So, I said, well, I'll do whatever you want, but I just remember, I want to be a bartender here, and I want to learn about this business. So he said, well, here's a rag. And he handed me a rag. This is like the greatest Ryan story for me. So hands me a rag, and he says, you see that cow? And there was this giant cow for the Holy Cow. And it was like this big ceramic or whatever it was cow that was this decoration. It had big sunglasses on it and a halo for the Holy Cow. And he goes, clean it. And that was my introduction to working with Mark. And so I get up there and I'm cleaning and I'm like scrubbing this thing. And then from there, I mean, he hired me right on the spot. I was a busser. And again, I'd had some college education at that point, had some experience in hospitality at a higher level than, even a busser at that point.
Yeah.
But it was like, I'm willing to do whatever to get my foot in the door for this opportunity. So I did that. And within very, very short period of time, worked my way up, got my first bartending gig. And what I owe was my introduction to craft beer. So craft brewing then became a thing for me. And this was very early in the craft beer movement. So like 1993, I think we were the #2 brewery in the state of Nevada.
Oh, wow.
I think we were number 92 in the United States for craft breweries. I mean, it was really early on. And I remember, funny story about that, like we brewed an IPA, which everybody drinks now.
Yeah.
I remember we brewed an IPA in 1993 or 94 that was the only beer that I remember that we couldn't sell because nobody would drink it because it was too bitter.
Yeah.
And that just tells you how crazy it changed and how fast it changed, right?
Yeah.
So I would smell those beers being brewed there, and I just remember falling in love with craft beer. And I remember thinking, someday maybe I can do that. Maybe it'll make sense for me to be involved in brewing. And that was always in the back of my mind. And as I move forward through the rest of my career and my life, it was amazing when the other parallel combined, and that was my wife, Stephanie. So her family, hospitality focused. Her dad had been in hospitality and tourism quite a bit. He had worked in restaurant. He had worked for a restaurant group and hotel group called the Tapadera. And then he had owned a small bar in the Dalles, Oregon, which is where they were from. And he was working for this gentleman, George Drumheller. And George, Steve and Jan, and they took their little daughter, Stephanie, down to Cannon Beach on the weekends when they could get away. And they would stay at the Surf Sand Resort. And at the time, the Surf Sand Resort was owned by a gentleman. He owned a couple of other hotels along the coast. And in typical Steve fashion, he was always negotiating. So, and this was long before I knew him, but I can tell that he was probably always the same way. And he was down there for a weekend vacation and never stopped working and was negotiating a deal to buy the Surf Sand Resort.
Wow.
And he took it back to George Drumheller and offered it to George to buy the hotel. He's like, we should go down and buy this hotel and I'll run it and we'll work down there. And George looked at me, he's like, nah, I'm not really, he wasn't really keen on Cannon Beach. And he goes, but you know what, Steve, you should do that. Well, Steve and Jan didn't have a lot, and they took everything that they had and put it in to buy this hotel for the down payment. And then they had a balloon payment that was due. And what they didn't know when they signed the deal was that the hotel had already been sold 2 or 3 times previously. And the person selling it had taken it back each time because nobody could ever meet the balloon payment. So you get there, you see the summer, and then we all know what winters are like on the coast. And they would suffer, and then that balloon payment would come due 2 years later, and there was no way for them to get through it. He would take back the property and then reinvest in it, get it back up, and then he would sell it again. So he had done that a couple of times prior and was planning to do it again probably for Jan and Steve. Lo and behold, we had one of those crazy winters where there was no snow on the mountain and the cars lined up in the parking lot and everybody had ski racks on their cars with nowhere to go. So they came to the beach instead. And the story that I always loved from my mother-in-law was that it was the last penny that they took in that last day of April that made them be able to pay that final balloon payment to be able to move on. And that was the story of the Surf Sand. So that was where they started, was the Surf Sand Resort, 1979. And then lo and behold, they moved forward. And again, Steve was the very, very hospitable individual. And he realized one thing that was missing in sleepy Cannon Beach at the time was consistency with the restaurants. So the restaurants would close for the winter and then they would reopen, at spring and spring break, but nobody was consistent. So like if we had a guest come to the hotel, you couldn't say, yeah, you can go across the street to the Wayfarer and guarantee that there was going to be somebody there at 8:00 at night to feed you. So lo and behold, the Wayfarer had opened in 77, and Steve took the opportunity in 1983. Steve and Jan purchased the Wayfarer restaurant, and so that they could give a reliable experience for their hotel guests. So that was how they got back into the restaurant business begrudgingly, because Steve always was like, he didn't want to go back in the restaurants, didn't want to go back, but that was his entree back in. Restaurant business is tough, and we all know that. So he was trying to avoid it, but just he couldn't do it if he wanted to provide a high level of service for his customers. And then over the years, things continue to evolve for the Martin family. So in 1983, they also purchased Haystack Gardens, which was a floral garden shop right there in Midtown Cannon Beach. They bought that so that they could use the downstairs area as a open space for meetings, for small retreats, for people to pull people down. And they moved some offices up top because they had outgrown their home office, and they needed the Surf Sand and the Wayfarer offices to be functioning for those properties. So they built a little office space. In that same time, they bought a hotel in Seaside. They bought, over that same period of time, they bought the Viking Motel over after a couple of years. I think it was 85. The Viking Motel, which was next to the old Major Motel. Those are two classic properties from Cannon Beach's history. The Viking is the setting now of the Stephanie Inn,
Okay.
and the Major Motel is now the setting of the Ocean Lodge, if that makes sense, if you remember those locations. So they bought the Viking Motel, and the idea was one day they were going to build a space that was truly exemplary and satisfy people's expectations in a way that they didn't even know they should be satisfied on the Oregon coast. And that ended up becoming the Stephanie Inn and dining room and all of the experiences and touches that have evolved from there over time. So over those years, there was other projects. We took on a bunch of properties in California and Washington as managers. We owned hotel and restaurant in the Dallas, Oregon, Quality Inn Cousins Restaurant. And when in 2001, we made the decision to really focus on our backyard, and Martin's family of properties stopped going so far and wide, and we really became very linearly focused on the Cannon Beach market, our properties there, Surf Sand, Stephanie Inn, the dining room, and then we had one property that we managed in Seaside called the Inn of the Four Winds, cute little property, and we no longer manage that. The owner is doing something different with that property now, but it was a cute little property. But we had basically kept all of these kind of primary assets that we wanted to continue to manage, and then we dissolved everything else from our ownership and management. So onward with that, and so we fast forward 2004. I'm now involved. So I moved here in 95. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around, but in 95, I had moved to Cannon Beach. So I was there early on in the development of the Stephanie Inn. Interestingly, for me, one thing that was fascinating about the Stephanie Inn was when I moved there in 95, it felt like it had been there forever, but it had only been there for 2 years. It was 1993, but it already had that kind of iconic nature to it. And that was always really a special property, a very special experience, again, that people weren't expecting. And I think that's why it has been so successful and continues to be so successful today, because we've never rested in that space. We're always developing and always adding experiences that people want to come back or want to share, and which keep people excited about that property. But over the years, a lot of things changed. So that sleepy little hotel that was the Surf Sand Resort Motel started out as a 33-room motel, and over multiple iterations evolved. And in 2005, we embarked on what ended up being a 3-year project. And that was a complete overhaul of that property with the inclusion of multiple new rooms. And we took the room count up to 97 rooms from, the earliest stage of 33 up to 97. But it was, I think it was at 83 when we made that final transition. But it included rebuilding buildings that were only 20 years old, because the coast takes the life out of a lot of buildings really quick. And it's the only place where people will see stainless steel actually rust. And it just doesn't, it's just fascinating. So the coast is pretty brutal, but yeah. So here we are today. We have the Wayfarer restaurant. Again, we've owned that since 1983. We have the Surf Sand Resort. We have the Stephanie Inn and Stephanie Inn dining room. And in 2004, we purchased what is called the Lumberyard Restaurant. Was the Lumberyard Restaurant. We bought that with this vision of me finally fulfilling my dream of building a brewery. I had this idea that we were going to do what we did really well, which was we knew the restaurant so good. We were just going to take that kind of idea, go down there, put it into downtown Cannon Beach. And then after 5 years, we'd be able to add a brewery component where the offices had been kind of housed. And then that didn't happen because the economy totally imploded, within that 5 year period. And nobody was interested in us building a brewery. And I certainly didn't have the wherewithal to be able to pull it off. And then fast forward multiple years, it was 2014, I think it was, fall of 14. I finally told Stephanie, I'm like, we're not getting any younger. If we don't do this, we're never going to do it. So I sat down with Will LaRue, who was our corporate chef, and really, he did a lot more than just be a chef for us. He's this kind of like culinary wizard, right? He's a beekeeper. He's like raised tobacco. He has a farm. He's raised animals. I mean, the guy is like a jack of all trades, man. And it is really interesting because his palate is so phenomenal that I knew the correlations with brewing and his cooking practices, in particular his baking history, they're very similar. And consequently, when he made the decision to join me to be the brewer of Public Coast with zero experience, we opened our brewery with good beer, really good beer. And people were astounded to find out that he wasn't a brewer. In fact, he went to the local home brewers market, and I'll never forget the story. It was so funny. I think he waited a little while to tell me this. He's going to watch this. He's going to kill me. But he had walked into the Astoria home brewers market or whatever it was, and he was talking to the guy. He had never brewed beer ever. And he's talking to the guy about brewing, and he said, I'm thinking about learning how to do it. And the guy said to him, there's a guy down in Cannon Beach who actually thinks he's going to brew beer commercially. He's never brewed before. And he's talking about Will to Will. And I always thought that was so funny because it was so true. It was like, we had the resources for Will to train commercially in Las Vegas with the guys that I had worked with all those years before, which was really cool. So Will went down, lived in Las Vegas, learned how to brew beer. And then he came back to Oregon and he brewed those first batches with some support. So it wasn't like he was always on his own. He had that layer of training and education, like in the field, which was phenomenal. And consequently, a year after we opened, we won the World Beer Cup Gold with our most iconic and probably one of the most challenging beers, one of the probably two most challenging beers that you could win a medal in, which is the Blondale category. And that's kind of the Olympics of beer making, and couldn't be more proud of the work that he's done. And now we have Ben Christensen, who's our associate brewer, and he's learning the trade. And I've known Ben since he was like 4 years old. And it's our family, and we continue to grow our family, and things have changed a lot with the business, and we'll probably get into that. We brought in a management company, and we've changed things. Things have definitely changed over the last couple of years, but it's all really good, and we're really excited. Where I'm sitting today is the next evolution, right, for us with Public Coast Farm, and it's all coming very soon. So that's kind of the overlay of those two parallel paths.
There's a lot of history, and that's the coolest thing is like just seeing the build up from your one parallel, Vegas brewery, Holy Cow Brewery, to Cannon Beach, Stephanie Inn, Surf Sand, Wayfair, leading into this creation of Public Coast. And I want to touch base on a few things that you said, just because one, a phrase that has stuck with me since the day I met you. I think it was one of our first conversations in your office, or it was either in your office or it was at the Surf Sand. And you said you're a creative analytic. And I resonated with that because I'm a very much so a numbers guy, data, revenue, strategy, but then also creative part, which we'll get into a little bit. But being creative with how you analyze these numbers and this information and put it out and overall grow and increase, and of course train and develop, and there's all these things that go into it. And the way you tell a story, that is what like always has hit like the nail on the head for me, is just the way you tell a story. And just one for all the listeners, the Stephanie Inn iconic property, it's just overall beautiful, and the experiences there are insane. I only know because I've experienced it and seen it. But another thing really was the way you tell a story with Public Coast. So I don't think a lot of people know this, but this is why I've mentioned it a few times on the show. People have heard me probably say Public Coast Brewery, Public Coast Farms, because 363 miles of Oregon beach is all public. And your beer that you won the golden ale, not golden ale.
67 blonde. Yep.
Yeah, 67 blonde.
Blonde ale.
Yes, blonde ale. So it was all public coasts and all public beaches in 1967. And that's also the title of your beer. So the name of the restaurant, the brewery, to the beer, to the story it tells, is super iconic. Like, it's just, that is what, for me, and we talked about this again too, is what defines a destinationaire. That's what I like to call them, where you create a destination. Like, obviously Cannon Beach is a very well sought place, at least in the Pacific Northwest. I know when my time there was plenty of guests that came from all over the world just to come to the beach. But I just think overall, it's already a destination, but you created by your storytelling and your creative analytic type mindset, which is very unique, to create another destination, to create that Martin North family destination of properties and experiences. And so for me, that is just like, I don't know, I geek out about this stuff. And so just hearing, the chain of events, the story, the legacies, and then of course a parallel like meetup of what it is today is just so the definition of hospitality to me. Like, that is what this show is all about. This is what's inspired a lot of things in my career as well. And so you said, I'm gonna quote you, because this is what this is something I also love too. So not only are you a creative analytic, but we said we are wired to create remarkable experiences that are shared and anticipated. Now, I really want to dive in to what inspired you to say this. Obviously, you and I were talking about Public Coast Farms, which is to come. And so what inspired you to say this, and explain that mindset that you have, being wired to create remarkable experiences? Because I think for a lot of listeners, they know that's what I believe in, and the core value of what we do as hoteliers or destinationaires or restaurateurs. That mindset is so incredibly important. So I just kind of want to dive into your thinking of that.
Yeah. So, as I kind of mentioned, the company's major transition that happened was back in 2001. So my late father-in-law, he had passed away. We started to look at the portfolio as it was standing and where we were managing and where we were spreading our resources. And it became very aware that we needed to focus in our backyard. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was the evolution of that kind of concept, right? Because everything that we started doing from that point forward was very, very focused on adding value to an experience that somebody had, so they would want to come back and do it again tomorrow if they could, right? Or go home and share it so that somebody else would want to come and experience this beautiful thing. And that became this kind of vertical integration of concepts and ideas, not just our own, but how do we integrate better with a community? How do we integrate better with the supply chain in the community? How do we source our products? How do we source our food for the menus? And it became so granular over the coming years that by the time Stephanie and I had purchased the company, the remaining balance from her mother, it was very, very detailed on this is who we are here. And it was very specific all the way down to where we sourced our meat from and how far 400 miles at the Stephanie Inn. That was our whole span for our entire menu. There's a couple of outliers there with champagne, because people expect red champagne, but we took it as far as to say, even our wine list was very targeted within a 400-mile area. And at the Wayfarer, it was 1,000 miles. And at Public Coast, which was at the time Lumberyard, it was 1,000 miles or 1,500 miles, which gave us a little bit more east. And so you had access to a few different product lines, a little further out into the ocean. So you had access to a few different species of products, right? Mm-hmm. But it was very, very granular. And I think that was kind of where that started, was at that time, without even realizing what we were doing, we were just really breaking down the experiences and saying, how can we partner with people to elevate these experiences? So working with local farmers became a really big thing for us. It became a really big thing for everybody. I mean, let's just keeping it real.
Yeah.
Farm to table became its own kind of concept, but we were really ahead of that. I mean, I remember the mushroom forager when I came to the Stephanie Inn for the first time ever back in 1995. The mushroom forager coming through the back door and showing the chef what they had just foraged, and a transaction happening right then and there as he's preparing a meal for dinner that night.
Wow.
Like, that's super high touch, high experience, high value. And that vertical integration of community and space is what we've really gone after. And so it became really clear as we were evolving, like with the surf sand, as the surf sand was developing out, it was, how do we do that more? How do we work with more local vendors? How do we work with more local experiences? And then for our own self. So why are we not doing the brewery? We're not doing a brewery. We're running a restaurant. We don't want to be restaurateurs. We want to be experience creators, right? So it's like, we're going to just sit here and continue to do this thing that we're not really like walking around like super proud of. And it's funny, just a little sidebar, lumberyard. The whole plan was to add a lumberyard brewing to this great restaurant concept. And because of how much time had passed, Lumberyard Brewing Company is a great brewing company down in Arizona. So we couldn't do Lumberyard Brewing anymore. So, good for them, bad for us at that time. I was devastated until the brand kind of came out of the ashes of that, Public Coast. The people that I've had the luxury and the privilege of working with creatively, especially, like I think about that project, the surf sand rebranding that we did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It's all the same core team of people. It's Marcy, it's Holly, it's Max and Megan with central office. These people are so incredibly inspiring. And just the way that the story got told, Kate Sokoloff, Kate was this incredible writer. She was able to put voice, between her and Holly, put voice to our brand in a way that I had never even been through that process at that level. And it's super inspiring. And it's really, when you're in it, I mean, there's nothing like that. I'm so lucky I got to work with those guys. But Public Coast, brewing beer, manufacturing product, the whole purpose of that was to add value to a Cannon Beach experience. Breweries, there's a lot of breweries. I mean, there's a lot of incredible breweries in the state of Oregon. And we've had so many incredible relationships with these breweries as we were starting up. They were helping us out. It's a very integrated culture. And I love that about the brewing side of our business. Brewers are friends. They take care of each other. They're not competitive. It's a completely different mindset than any other industry that I've been a part of. It's very collaborative. And that makes it really exciting for a brewer and for me, to be able to see that. But all of that being said, we were brewing because we could get great beer and we could get great stories from other people. But it was like, but this is a thing that could differentiate us from everybody else. We've got these great hotel assets, and now we're telling a story about a product that we're producing just down the street that is now in a glass for you to consume. Oh, okay, wait a second. Now let's take our concept of how we do restaurants, and now we're going to source products. Okay, so now we're going to source honey for that honey red ale that we do. We're going to source it from a local beekeeper. Then it becomes like, what are other ingredients? Local rosemary and all these herbal kind of additions.
Wanks peppers.
Different fruits. And yeah, it was just like, it was fascinating. And so you get Will, who gets it, and then you get the brewing, and he's got that whole concept down so good with working with the regional markets. And then it was like the evolution of that. It was so easy for us to go, gosh, we should do something over the hill. So the idea was, this all started because of distribution. Public Coast Farms was born out of this desire to have an outlet to distribute product into Portland. So what was happening was, so we started brewing, and we had enough people who were interested in our product so we get to sell it over in Portland, right?
Mhm.
So we have this little van, and we can load it up with 7 or 8 kegs of beer, and Ben and Will would drive that little van over. It's an hour and a half into Portland. They'd go here, there, and everywhere, back and forth across the city, because we're just going to sell it wherever we can, and that's what you need to do. We're hungry, right? 13 hours later, they're delivering back home to Cannon Beach, an empty truck, and they're exhausted, and we've served 8 accounts, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we've picked up a few empty kegs. And it was like, wait a second, there's a reason why trucks don't go back and forth empty. They don't deadhead. And so what can we do? You know what? There's a ton of vendors that we don't have access to on the coast, except through big box suppliers. And some of the big box suppliers don't have access to some of the small vendors that are in the valley. And there's so many incredible farms. I mean, oh my goodness, Gales Meadow, which is just down the street from Public Coast Farm, unbelievable people. They produce unbelievable products. And they were one of the only little farmers that would actually drive over to the coast because they were selling enough product to the Wayfarer to make it worth their while, and maybe a couple of other locations. But there's so many farms like that on this side of the hill that we don't have access to, not to mention other suppliers. So for instance, on the coast, we don't have access, there's nobody making, at least in volume, the ice cream for us, right? So we couldn't, I mean, you've got Tillamook. I mean, Tillamook's a great product, right? And I mean, I'm the first one to say Tillamook is an incredible company. It's an incredible product. It's in our backyard. It hits on so many marks, but it's not really a craft product. And they do have some craft kind of lines, which we have, we've experienced, and they're very nice. But for us, it was like, who can we work with? So we started working with Ruby Jewel. That was a great partnership for a long time. And now we're working with Tillamook for now, and that's great. But that was a great example. You come over here, you have access to a vendor, and that you don't have access to on the coast. We stop by, we pick up the product. Now the truck's coming back full of product, not empty the way it was. Mm-hmm. And you're still only servicing 7 or 8 accounts because of the way it's set up. And then it was like, okay, what's the next step? And we needed storage. We need storage here. So we started looking in this area for storage capacity, cold storage, ice cream storage, or freezer storage. And then I'm having a conversation with my good friend Keely O'Brien. And Keely says, why don't you just grow some hops, find a piece of property and grow some hops and have a little tasting room like a winery. So if you have 15 acres of hops, you should be able to do a tasting room. And I'm like, really? Okay, maybe we could do that. So not a farmer, and was thinking we would lease some land and maybe even a farmer who would want to grow some hops, and we could have a little tasting room and cold storage facility, and that could become a distribution hub for us. So I started looking, and that didn't go so well. Nobody was interested in leasing me land, and then I kind of gave up on it. I gave up on the idea, and I was driving home one day from my son's soccer game in Portland, and I'm coming down Highway 26, property that I've seen dozens of times over the years, and contemplated how beautiful it was and how unique it was. It used to belong to Ramblin' Rod, and I had heard that story. And I'm driving by, and I see a for sale sign out of the corner of my eye, and I turned my car around and went back, and did I really just see a for sale sign? Call the guy, how long has this been for sale? Almost 365 days. And it's like, there's been no for sale sign. I drive by this all the time. And he goes, yeah, the owner didn't want to have a for sale sign out on the highway until I think it was like yesterday.
Wow.
And I'm like, so I said, we'll be there tomorrow to look at the property. I'm just really curious. And I came here with Dave Norstead, who worked with me for a number of years.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to the house, and each building, each of us was like bouncing these ideas about, we could do this and we could do this, and we can do this over here and we can do that. And it just kept getting like, the excitement was building. By the time we got to the last building on the site, which is this beautiful hangar that was built maybe 4 years ago or 5 years ago now, that was hardly used at all. It's this beautiful finished hangar, 2 restroom facilities. It's got about an 80-foot span that completely opens up with 20-foot high ceilings. I can't wait for people to come and see this place. Unbelievable event space. Like you can see a concert, or you can see music, and you can see all. By the time we were sitting there, and the guy had opened up these walls for us, and we're looking out onto the farm. I'm like, I looked at Dave and I'm like,
Yeah.
we got to do this. And Dave looked at me and he's like, if you don't do it, I might. So lo and behold, the next day, I convinced Stephanie. I'm like, I think we got to do this. And she's like, all right. And she was totally game. And we bought the farm. and it's been a project, but it's evolved. And that evolution is all tied to the same thing. How do we add value to what we do in Cannon Beach? Everything about this is about adding value to the experience. There's not many hotels. I mean, I do know that there are some, but there's not many hotels that can say that they're sourcing from their own farm. We have a 40-acre farm here. We have a 5,000 square foot state-of-the-art growing facility for vegetables and fruits year-round. We have, not to mention, 10 acres of blueberries active. Right now, we've got clover that's on the farm. We have a runway, which I have not taken out yet until we have a tasting room, which we're going to be building this year. So we'll have a tasting room and a small farmhouse brewery that'll be on site. That's going to be very exciting. We just completed our cold storage facility. So we have about almost 2,000 square feet of cold storage for berries and fruits and vegetables, and another 500 square feet of frozen storage. So the goal here is zero loss off the farm. We are completely sustainable with power. So we have solar installed. We have a solar field that will be installed when we build the tasting room. The entire property will be completely off grid if it needs to be, which is very exciting. We're working on the water reclamation pond right now to reclaim all the water off of these structures to be able to use for irrigation purposes, which is really exciting. It just continues to evolve. And in addition, we have, right now we have 5 acres of apples. We're adding another 5 acres of apples. It's just, you have to see it. I got to get you out here, Will. You're going to love it.
I was gonna say, that's why I love it. Like you just said too, there's not many hotels that can be like telling the story of their own fruit of labor, I guess, like no pun intended, but like legit, like you work at a hotel, and I remember all the times just being like, oh yeah, we recommend this restaurant or this brewery or whatever because it's close, we've gone there ourselves, like whatever, it's a personal recommendation. But to have that extra touch and say, hey, let's say I'll just at the Wayfair, for example, somebody tries a beer. Where did you get this beer from? Like, where's this beer brewed? And it's actually right down the road. We brew it ourselves. It tells the story of the coast and the history. Now that opened up so many doors for me and that guest to connect in different ways as humans. And so now take that to a grander scale, like you just did, of 40 acres and, 10 acres of blueberries and apples and all this other stuff that's going to be self-sustainable. That just opens, I don't know, not only is it creative and innovative and just the way, I think this industry should always be for, like I think we got so lost in the cookie cutter. This is a hotel. This is how all the rooms look like. This is like the square building box that we've built. And this is now one of the most, this has always been one of the most creative industries, but we put our own selves in our own box. This is an example of getting out of that box and getting creative and getting to the point of like, we are humans. And especially like in these times that we're in now, with everything going on with COVID-19 and protests and everything, we want to connect with people. We want to be loved. We want to be heard. We want to be, a part of a culture. We want to be we want to be important. And this example that you guys are leading, that opens up that door so intensely that I think a lot of people overlook, not a lot of people, but I just, yeah, I get a little passionate about this, but it's just, it's something that, you and I think have connected on that level of Destinationaire. You're creating something so unique into the aspect of what hospitality truly is. So I can't wait to go see it.
Yeah.
To be honest, been hearing about it for years. And so once the farm is fully, even not fully, I'd love to come anytime, but just the idea of what, the mission and purpose is and how it's going to be communicated and the impact is so super unique. So I give you guys kudos.
I just had a hospitality friend here just this morning that I was meeting with, and we met out here a year ago, and he was blown away with what has happened and what's transformed out here in just a year. For me, it feels like I've been out here for years, but we've owned the property for just over a year and a half. So we're in our second year now, and it'll probably take another couple of years for this to totally build out. And it's a definite passion play. And I'm really excited. We are weeks away now from producing the vegetables out of the greenhouse, grow house. And when that happens, the stories that will be coming to life, I mean, it's just for our staff, for our guests, the experience that creates is going to be very, very special. So much care. And I do think it's really important to share, like, I'm not a farmer. So like, it's kind of our running joke, right? So like,
accidental farmer.
I call myself an accidental farmer, right?
Yeah.
This wasn't the intention. The intention was that we had a space for distribution and kind of this hub kind of concept. So we're not approaching this like we know how to do everything. I have a wonderful farm manager and his family who live here on site. They oversee kind of all of the aspects. So they kind of are me and Stephanie when we're not here, right? Mm-hmm. So, but he's not a farmer. I mean, he's not the blueberry farmer. So we have a blueberry farmer that we contract with. So the blueberries are taken care of by a specific farmer. The apples are taken care of by a specific farmer. The greenhouse has a specific farmer. We're going to be installing hops. That's going to be a very specific farm group that will be managing those. So each one of these is its own kind of outside group because that's what they do. Yeah. It's not what we do. And, stay in your lane. And what I can do is we can vision this, we can build it, and then it can be executed by the professionals so that we can tell the best stories and sell those products effectively. And I'm really excited for that. Really excited.
No, that's the best part. I was talking to a couple other people in the industry and just talking about, what does it mean to embody this, right? We have the vision, but what does it take to really be a Destinationaire? And this, being able to create, seeing the gap that you can find a solution for, and then also executing. And I think you worded it out perfectly because, stay in your lane and do what you do best. And that's telling stories and being able to provide what you can. But like having a farmer for each thing is so important because that's what they do. They wake up and they breathe, live, and dream blueberries, It's like that's their life. And so why not let them take control and do what they do? And that itself, I think, is just super keen, is just executing on these ideas, being able to create this. It's easy for a lot of people to talk the talk, but to walk the walk and then also talk as needed is important.
I think a funny add to that is that there's something to be said. There's so much value if you recognize that you don't know and you step into that gap.
Yeah.
There's so much value in there, in that vulnerability in that space. And what's surprising to me through this whole process is the value that brings to the other person, right? Because I'm going to ask a question that is really probably pretty stupid sometimes about the blueberry plants, but they haven't answered that question maybe ever. And then the next question that they're not expecting is, but what would it take for me to do this? And they'll be, look at me. I've had this happen so many times out here. I don't know. Well, I guess we could do that. And I guess you could build your own dehydration facility. And yes, I guess you could build a pickling plant and you could try and have zero loss on the farm. Yeah, I guess. Like, they don't even think about it. And then all of a sudden you see their creativity. Yeah. But I mean, that vulnerability, it starts there, right? Like, I don't know I can't farm the apple trees or the blueberry plants or that greenhouse. But every time I'm here, I am so excited to learn more.
Mhm.
And that's what I think, that's where it becomes really powerful. And that's where I think the storytelling really takes flight, because it is always an evolution. It was with beer for us. It continues to be with beer, and it will always be. We're manufacturing a product every day that then somebody is consuming. That's part of an experience that we want them to come back and repeat as soon as they want to, or as soon as they possibly can, right? Or share that story. It's the same with this. It's just one more manufactured kind of opportunity to say, hey, we actually produced this, and this is how we did it. And you get there by being vulnerable, being aware of what you don't know, and being willing to understand it. And I love that.
Yeah, and I was gonna say you and I both been very big Gary V fans, and what you just said with
Very.
I know Gary V with that is that it comes with a lot of self-awareness, and I think for me in my own personal growth and just in the industry itself is becoming self-aware. You know, there were so many things that like maybe some insecurities or challenges or anything that I wasn't fully aware of, like I knew in the back of my head, but they kind of got brought to light. And you and I have talked about this, but like just the overall self-awareness and like you said, putting yourself in that vulnerable spot when you do see that gap. Um, it opens up not just like the ability to storytell like you guys get to do with your guests and your staff, but it opens up that possibility to grow. And then of course it has impact and
Right.
value. And so I think that's where a lot of, I don't know, hospitality in itself is just such a unique thing to think about. And I get this question all the time. And I'm pretty sure maybe you do too in some aspects, but um, you know, people are like, how can you run a podcast based on hotels and restaurants and like
Mm-hmm.
vacation rentals? Like, how do you not run out of stuff to talk about? And I tell them, I was like, you would be surprised because there are so many things that go into what we do, into what the industry is. And of course, look in the last 5 years, there's so much growth. There's been so much popping off and changing and innovation that has happened. For example, a brewery and a farm and all these things on the coast. Like it's so extensive. And then of course you bring it down to the personal level, the leadership, the value, the realness of like our mission and purpose of connecting and building experiences. And like I don't know, I think there's a lot to say about first impressions, and then also not only first impressions but the mark and the memories after that first impression, like being able to tell my kids in 20-30 years, like, yeah, Cannon Beach was a place that I got started. That's where the podcast was born, or that is where I found my deep passion, or like just anything like that. That opens up. It's so extensive, so extensive. And I know we kind of got lost in the sauce and talking about, you know, self-improvement and awareness, but I just think that overall it goes into everything that we're talking about. And so I want to lead
It
into,
totally does, Will. It does. I mean,
yeah.
it's all interrelated, man. So,
Yeah. Well, and so this kind of leads into where I wanted to get in with you a little bit more too, is how can hoteliers or destinationaires really embody and sorry, excuse me. How can hoteliers and destinationaires fully embody and apply this mindset and leadership to style to their team, their guests, you know, alike, especially during these times of COVID-19? This is such I think the word that we've been all saying is uncertainty of when things will go back to normal, if they go back to normal, you know, all these other things. And I think taking what you've learned and kind of everything we just talked about is so deep and so important, but I just kind of want to see, what do you think people can get from this during this time?
yeah. So obviously heavy days, man. I mean, last couple months have been unbelievable as we've been going through it. And it's been hard to lift your gaze to look ahead, because
Mm-hmm.
the uncertainty of every day has been so hard. And that's my take, me being transparent with you. Like it was extremely unnerving, and it continues to be unnerving, Not as much as we're opening up and things are kind of loosening up, but
Yeah.
it is still unnerving because there isn't certainty on the horizon. There isn't like a metric that we're trying to hit like it was when it started, right? 14 days, it was 30 days to flatten this curve. We did all that and it was never enough. It's like it keeps changing. And that uncertainty is causing a lot of craziness in a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think it's scary to me, frankly, because of the uncertainty continuing. And, you know, unemployment benefits only go for so long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these bonus unemployment benefits that are extended through the end of July, those aren't, I can't imagine those are renewed, but not all of these jobs are coming back. And that's going to be, if we think now is scary, imagine it with, 10 million people that don't have jobs.
Yeah.
That's going to be pretty scary. So, obviously I'm optimistic for all of this. This is all very good. And I think it's going to be wonderful for us to storytell. But I think that, I think the biggest thing, and you've heard this so many times because of the things that you listen to and the things that you experience, but the biggest thing that is so important right now is empathy. It really is empathy, man. It's being empathetic to your staff members, understanding where they're at. There's fear. I mean, people are scared, and that's being propagated every day. And frankly, that fear, it's incumbent on us as leaders to find ways to help them feel less of that. And you do that by acknowledging it and being empathetic to their position and where they're at, sometimes even when it doesn't necessarily align with where you're at personally. But I think empathy is probably the biggest thing, man. And just that awareness for your guest. But it starts with your employees.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard right now. Our industry is being brutalized for so many reasons. I mean, when you talk about restaurants, the restaurant industry, this is an unbelievable moment in time for an industry that is built on passion, because anybody who owns a restaurant will be the first one to tell you that it's not built on profits.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
So it is 100% passion. And these passionate people who care so much about the product that they're putting in front of you and the people that work for them, it's under attack. And and so many of them are going to be challenged to open their doors again. And that's really, really sad to see as somebody who loves so much of the culinary structure of like Portland in particular. And a lot of them will come back with time, and I'm excited for that. But it's going to be a bit of time, especially now with what's happening, right? But I think that the hotel side, it's really hard to connect with people behind a mask. Like I experienced this at a hotel down in Southern California a couple of weeks ago that had opened up, and my family was all sequestered down there, and I was here. We join up. My experience was that at the end of it, I wasn't sure what it was and then it hit me. I could never connect with anybody because I could never feel genuine care, empathy, warmth, because I could never see a smile. And no matter how much we smile with our eyes, there's so much more to body language and that we take for granted all the time. Our business is the one business that this will impact more than anybody else. If you can't connect with people in a way that is memorable and makes their heart feel warm and cozy and safe, then a room's a room, a hotel is a hotel, and at the end of the day, it becomes a value proposition. And that isn't the space that we've ever played in. I'm not in the value proposition hotel space, so we're in an experience space. Mm-hmm. And I do know now, more than ever, it is truly about, you have to be able to express that level of empathy to somebody, and you do that through the emotional connection that you have to somebody. Yeah. It is virtually impossible right now to achieve that I mean, I watched it firsthand. I've heard it firsthand. We have the fortune of having a lot of repeat guests, so they know us.
Yeah.
So they know what's happening underneath the mask. But I do think the industry as a whole, this is going to take its toll on people's experiences, and I'm really hopeful, that we get through the other side safely, first and foremost for everybody, and then that we're able to salvage our sense of empathy for others and how they feel. Because without that, our industry will be beat up for a long time.
I want to say it's poetic, but it's not really poetic. It's sadly poetic, but we're, able to break down barriers in so many ways in our industry, with people and walls that we have put up ourselves. And then to now literally have barriers in front of us that we now see. As humans, we obviously all go through our own journeys and have either issues with trust or confidence or just anything like that. And now you're putting legit plexiglass windows in front of the check-in desk and masks and even gloves. Like, yes, this is all for the safety of everybody involved, every stakeholder. But now I think our challenge as an industry is going to be, not only are we going to have to break down barriers emotionally and humanly, but now it's physical. It's a legit barrier in front of us that we are going to have to work even harder to get to those internal ones that, not that like we're all here to be counselors for anybody or anything, but like you said, empathy is so huge. And just having friendship. I still have, go ahead.
Oh, no, finish.
I was gonna say, I still have, guests that I've connected with 5 years ago that I talk to on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, whatever you name it. And it's not like because we connected on an emotional, crying, sappy way. It was just like we had fun. You get to have fun and you get to bond with just certain little things, and what opens that door up is body language and inflexation on tone of voice and how you make eye contact or lack of eye contact. And maybe if it's just putting a, arm out to say, hey, I'm here for you if you need it, that type of thing. And so that's pretty much all I was going to say, is just that part that we have now challenged with COVID-19. And it plays in so much, as much as this is a hard topic, I think, for everybody right now, but with the protests going on, this is what we need more than ever, is empathy and to really just say, hey, I love you, I appreciate you, whatever it is, in order. And now there's barriers, it's going to be hard. It's going to be a real hard challenge. But again, what you've seen from your career and from other, people in this space, we're very resilient. We're a very resilient industry. Yes, a lot of people are probably going to close their doors, but at the end of the day, the ones that stay open are the ones that are probably going to be the ones that adapted to the empathy and the overcoming of barriers that we're having in place now.
Yeah, I got idea. I read a book, or it was recommended to me to read a book a handful of years ago about the love languages. Super cheesy.
No, yeah.
Not self-help. I'm not going into that space with you.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because my language of how I communicate and how I love is through touch, man.
Yeah.
And I'm a big hugger. So everybody in my work family, personal family, it's always high touch, right? Yeah. Always a hug. It's always, man, I just need to grab you by the shoulders and just look at you, right? It's and there's that sense of well-being that comes for me from that, which is completely void right now, right? You can't have that. And that is such a, I think our culture, and I think we're getting a little heady here, but the culture for us in America, which I think is such an unbelievable, and I don't think it's this way everywhere, that handshake, that looking in the eye and the handshake, and it's just that connection through touch and through visual cues, right? Such an important part here. I know in Asia, they practice social distancing to a certain degree for a long time, for lots of reasons, right? And so it's different. Culturally, it's different. But here, and I think for me personally, that's been the hardest part, is that I look at somebody and somebody who I was able to hug last month and just say, hey man, I just really am happy to see you, and great to see you, or, you know, how's everything going in your life? And it just is that reminder that they're not alone. And maybe it's just me. Maybe they didn't even want that in the first place, probably. Who knows? But I think there's a certain part of that is happening. But it's like, you can't do that today.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And I see on certain people's faces, it's just like they just need some reassurance. And the only way I can reassure somebody is to like put my hand on their shoulder and just reassure them and look at them. And you can't be in that space right now.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that we get back there. We don't forget that is a good thing that people need to be connected to. And I mean, I hope we can get back there soon, very soon, because I think there's a lot of people who are like me who really need that. And they might not even realize that's what's missing, but I think it's missing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll make a comment just because I know I can without getting backlashed on it. But like my Army buddies I'm on COVID missions with, a couple of us have gotten pretty close. You know, you spend some time away from your family and friends and normal day-to-day stuff like doing the podcast, and my other business I've had to put on hold. Not on hold, but it's more now a side thing because I've been called to doing a different thing. But I think the ones of us that have gotten close, you know, I think we had that moment. Like I hugged my buddy Garcia. I gave him a big hug and I was like, bro, it's so good to see you. It's been so long. And I know we're probably not supposed to hug right now. We got masks on and we're all, you know, like super PPD, you know, up. But it's just, it's like, dang, this is, you know, I think take it for granted in a lot of ways. Cause I'm the same way. I'm a touch person. Words and affirmation and all that other stuff, but touch is a part of that. And just having that hug, like that one time was like, I know it's a bro moment, but it was like, dang, this is like, can we get back to this? Yeah. Can we get back to the simple things that we took, you know, I guess not oversaw, but just didn't really realize were key and important in our life. So I'm the same boat. I hope we get through it.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah.
Well,
you know what you just said reminded me. You just reminded me of something I want to say, and I want to say it on the podcast. Thank you for what you're doing. I mean, your work with the Guard, going in, helping the way that you do. Really appreciate your sacrifice too. I know you've been helping with the COVID testing, and there's just so many people who have given so much in this moment, and I don't want to forget that. So thank you for what you do.
No, of course. Thank you for just support. It's interesting. You know, it's like the secret society gets called up, you know, and we leave our day-to-day civilian jobs and then go to do this thing that we train once a month for. So it's unique. It's cool to see the people that come from it, like all the backgrounds of everybody. And again, this comes into the hospitality side of me. And of course you, is like, you get to see some interesting people and interesting stories that and then everybody just embodies it. And it's just like, hey, we have so many differences, different backgrounds, lives, everything, but here we are. And it's pretty cool. It's a cool thing to be a part of. So again, thank you for just supporting that, just because in the hospitality aspect, it all connects in my eyes, at least. But
Agreed.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I guess more moving into the conclusion of this episode, like I said, it's been something that has been in the works for a long time. I'm glad, like, this episode really has no topic other than to geek out about storytelling and becoming a destinationaire and all the other like cool things that we love, you know, to talk about and do. But I guess any final thoughts or, you know, information or just anything that you want to put out there for the listeners of Slick Talk and, you know, to continue on while they're listening.
No, I think you know we could do this again tomorrow probably and have a whole nother series of conversations about different things. So anytime you want to do it again, let's do it again, because it's a lot of fun. I've never done this before, so but really fun to get together with you, and I do appreciate it. And we are excited for the things that we have going on. If you're based in Portland or if you're based in Washington, and you get an opportunity to see this, highly, you know, I'm really looking forward to you being able to experience what we do with Martin's properties.
Yeah.
Just a really, really unique experience. And I'm really excited for how this new piece and new chapter kind of accentuates what's already a very special experience.
I agree. And for everyone listening, I will include everything that we've talked about. Surf Sand Resort, Stephanie Ann, Wayfair, Public Coast Brewery, Public Coast Farms. I'll include everything in the show notes. That way you guys are able to visualize. I'm a visual person as well. So I'll also be putting on socials, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Just so that way you guys can picture and actually see the experiences and stories that we've been talking about. But I just want to say thank you again, Ryan, for being on the show. For all those who are listening, check out martinnorth.team, and you can find out all the information there. And then, of course, have a heyday right there. Boom, Public Coast. And so, we're super thankful just for the experience and the opportunity.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you, Will.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you two places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.